Hey everybody, welcome. Hunt Club Podcast, AI in action show. Um, we've got a special guest today. You can see the title on the title screen there. This was a talk. We recently had our Hunt Club user conference, customer conference. We had one in Nashville, one in Berlin, Germany. And our special guest, Matt Silver, I'll let Matt introduce himself in a second, gave a fantastic talk on, you could see the title, Quantify Your AI Force Multiplier. He talked a lot about the application of AI in detection and response in the era of the modern network and modern attacks. And I'm like, wow, this would be a fantastic podcast episode. And I think Matt, you might be a regular guest on this show because we like to pick your brain. But Matt, why don't you introduce yourself so the audience kind of knows who they're listening to?
Sure. Yeah. Glad to be here. I really enjoyed seeing everybody at Hunt Club and glad to be here on the internet as well. So I'm Matt. Joined Vectra back in 2014. I've got a background in computational neuroscience. Before Vectra, I was working in neuroscience labs, trying to study the brain, and pivoted over to networks where I've been sort of quite taken by security ever since. So, yeah, really excited to be here and talk about all of the ways that we're trying to, make SOC analyst jobs easier by leveraging AI and other techniques.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that you just teed up a question that I had kind of to get you kind of on a roll here.
Sure.
Like what you said some interesting words there in terms of like make a SOC analyst's job easier. Um, how did you come to that realization? Like what is you know, um, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I was looking through I guess this was last year. You know, we you had presented some results from the Defender's Dilemma, right? The state of threat detection and response, where you were highlighting some of the challenges that SOC practitioners experience just day in and day out. Just this deluge of alerts. They can't even get through all the alerts that are being surfaced for them and really the vast majority of what's being put on the screen for these SOC practitioners are false positives. And I, was looking at that through the lens of what we do every day as data scientists and in our partnership with security researchers at Vectra, and just thinking, we have to change that. We are working to change that. How can we look at our work through the lens of this SOC practitioner and really highlight, minimization of alerts, right?
Yeah.
That's the key thing that I wanted to sort of talk to our customers about at Hunt Club.
Awesome. I think that there's probably like two elements of your talk that really stood out to me. I'll let you kind of jump in on like the first element. I
Yeah,
think of this potentially a two-part conversation with you because I think there's two parts to to your talk. One focused on detections and one focused on prioritization. And it was all rooted around entities, right? I think
that's
it
right.
was a
Yeah.
large majority of your talk. So I'm gonna like stop interrupting you and let you riff on kind of those two, tee up those two parts.
Yeah, it's a great segue into this, right? So this was the funnel that my team put together as I was trying to really embrace this view. And I really love this. So this is a sample of 845, I think it was, tenants in our SaaS platform over about a month period. And what we can do today is really drill down maybe into the first half of this, where
Yeah.
we're looking at the entities that we're monitoring in this platform, about 45 million of them over this 30-day period, and then how we drop that down into just under 4 million detections across these 800 some odd customers. And then, maybe we can come back in another section, talk about how we take that down to, just really a fraction of a percent on the
Yeah.
13,000, prioritized alerts, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Um,
No,
so
totally.
yeah, okay. So the first place that we need to start is talking about entities. This seems like it could be pretty straightforward, but ultimately there's a lot that actually we know our customers are trying to figure out, SOC practitioners are trying to deal with. There's this unending stream of alphanumeric strings that are coming across the monitors of SOC practitioners, but there are things they need to know about what they're seeing. IP addresses are not super helpful. They need to know what's this host, what are the accounts associated with that host, what are those accounts doing in the other environments that company might be using. And so what we've tried to do is really piece this information together. So we're exposing that these two IP addresses were maybe different DHCP leases on the same host. We know what account we're seeing in association with that host. We know how that account is showing up, maybe even through role assumption events off in AWS, putting this all together so that we're really clear about, who's who, right? And we think that this is absolutely critical in order to empower SOC analysts to go straight from an alert into taking action.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think is really cool about this is um, in order to solve this problem, we've got sort of models tucked in all over the place because it's not really just one system where you can just throw one big model at it. We've got a host ID system running in the background down on the appliance that's trying to basically observe artifacts from different that occur on different IP addresses, and over time build up stable representations of hosts, and then observe when that host shows up somewhere else. Where we've got modeling, looking through those role assumptions events that I mentioned before in AWS, so that what actor is actually performing actions in AWS, something that's really hard to do with the CloudTrail logs as they are. We're reconciling this information across all these environments. And we've really got a number of other things that are contributing to this overall view. We're learning about the privilege of users, hosts, and services, also up into cloud environments, figuring out what roles hosts have, identifying proxies. So many different models that are contributing
Yeah.
together to produce this holistic view so that we know who is who. I think from there, when we start looking at detections, that's where really Vectra, got started here. And that's where I think, certainly I have my first experience in terms of how one can leverage AI in the security domain. I think that the main thing that I would talk about through detections is that we fundamentally believe that the right way to approach this is not by building some giant overarching model that might perform reasonably well across a variety of different types of problems. Instead, we want to leverage highly specialized models or algorithms that are going to vastly outperform that general algorithm on the
Hmm.
specific problems for which they're built. And we have applied and reapplied this same framing, sort of our rendering of the no free lunch theorem, throughout the product life cycle. So as my team is engaging to develop a model to detect an attack behavior that our security researchers have identified, they're going wherever they need to go. They're leveraging whatever type of modeling approach is most appropriate for that specific problem, whether that's recurrent neural networks, tree-based methods, whether we're using clustering, you name it, right? And this is really across the different domains and threat surfaces that we cover. This has really been central to our approach for years. One of the really interesting conversations, and I mean, I think this came up a lot at Hunt Club, where customers were really excited to talk about Gen AI, what's
Yeah.
Vectra doing about Gen AI. This is sort of at the tip of everybody's tongue. And, I mean, there's a lot that's going on at Vectra leveraging Gen AI. When we talk about this within the detection context, it's sort of an interesting question. Uh, we're probably not going to go and leverage an LLM to detect attacks at real time at sort of network scale. It's not really the right tool for the job there. But there are definitely opportunities to leverage some of the really exciting, really powerful methods that are behind some of the sort of spectacular innovation we've seen over the last few years in Gen AI. And so one of the things that I highlighted at Hunt Club that I think is really powerful is how we're using self-supervised pre-training in our detection approach. So pre-training, sort of very briefly, is a strategy that modelers can leverage to really harness the power of just broad general data in a non-problem specific way. So, in natural language, this is, let's use all the data on the internet that we can get our hands on, right? And so rather than trying to solve a specific translation problem or sentiment analysis or something like that, can we just use all of that data to train a model in a self-supervised way that extracts the basic structure in language, and in the process learns representations of language or of words and sentences and so on that are then useful to solve very specific problems. In the security domain, actually, we have a really similar opportunity. We have tons and tons of benign data available to us, and we can leverage a pre-training process that allows us to learn representations of benign security data or security data in general that are then useful for training, say, detectors downstream that detect very specific attack
Yeah.
behaviors. And so this is really unlocking some of the value that has been at the heart of what we've done, what we've seen happening on the Gen AI side in service of detecting attack behaviors in networking cloud environments. It's
Yeah.
a really powerful technique that we've seen and that we are leveraging in production today, right? So if you look at this sort of cycle where when we discover, let's say, an area where we want to increase our model confidence, as our security researchers are constantly assessing our performance, when we dive in to enhance the capabilities of one of our models, we have choices, right? How are we going to go and approach this problem? How are we going to go and update our coverage? Um, Without pre-training, we're really sort of starting from scratch. We've got to build a big data set. If we're using neural networks, really the system that we're going to train, the network that we're going to train is going to learn its own representations implicitly along the way. This is a time-consuming process. And really we're sort of redoing some of the work that we could have already done within a pre-training type paradigm.
Yeah.
uh, Rather than starting from scratch, if we've got these learned representations already there that have already discovered the sort of broad structure in, say, network traffic data, um, we can go and find examples for the specific paradigm that we want to enhance our coverage on. And then we can stand up sort of a smaller model right on top of those learned representations. We can deliver targeted coverage really in a fraction of the time. So this is a really, really powerful approach. Really excited about the opportunities that we have as we continue to lean into this, develop richer and richer representations, and then roll out new coverage on top of it.
Yeah, and I go back to, I mean, I've seen this presentation before, which I'm always learn something new when I listen to you, Matt. But it's like I go back to that first slide you said with like the trigger behind this and the excitement behind this is like how do we make the SOC analyst's job easier, right? And in terms of like bring us full circle back to that, like in
Yeah,
terms of like pre-training and like building these models and solving the specific problems. At the end of the day, what's that value outcome you're ultimately after by doing this?
yeah, we want the tightest signal to noise ratio possible, right? We want to make sure that at all times we are staying, not only keeping up with evolving attacks, but really staying ahead of attacks. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
promise of AI here, right? That we're detecting things that the model hasn't even seen before, right? And so we're constantly working to enhance our coverage, but we need to be really sure that as we move forward, we can do it in a targeted way, in a tight way that's not pumping a whole bunch of additional noise into the sock, right? And so
Yeah.
we're really trying to generate really clean signal as best we can here, and we're trying to do it quickly. And then I think, maybe when we put our heads together again, we can start to talk about how triage and
Yeah.
prioritization can work in a really integrated way with this system to produce that sort of holistic, ideal outcome for the SOC.
Yeah, I think that you talked about, and I don't know if the audience caught it, but the security researchers that look at domain specific problems and the data scientists that look at the right tools for the job to solve that problem per domain, right? And it is about delivering that accurate signal per domain. But as we've talked about in the past, this is going to tee up part two of our conversation as well. You just brought up how do we take, individual detections by domain, because we know most attackers are multi-domain, right? And the need to like
Yep.
stitch things together and connect the dots for the analyst. And I think that's where triage and prioritization come into play, which, I apologize to the audience who was probably riveted by Matt, but you're going to have to wait till we get on the next episode with him and talk about part two. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Really
Conversation
would
around
like to,
AI force multipliers.
yeah, would like to walk through the rest of that funnel because
Yeah,
there's some good.
I love the Yeah, you definitely will. We're gonna have you back on. Yeah, probably within the next couple of weeks. You'll see Matt, and we'll do part two of this conversation. Um, if you enjoyed this, comment. You have questions, please comment, share, like, all the good things that podcasters ask you to do on YouTube or wherever this is being heard. Matt, thank you again,
Sure.
for the first of what I think will be many AI in action shows with Matt Silver and
Sounds
members of his
good.
team, hopefully coming on the podcast. With
Yeah, thanks
that,
for having me.
yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks, everybody.